Hi, my name's Bill. I work for Dominion Technologies Group Incorporated. Today, I'm going to show you how to rebuild a 1453X-20570 AC adapter. This one here has a 90-degree manifold on it for connecting up the hose assemblies instead of a vertical. So the toolkit for the AC rebuild, it has picks in it, and it has the lube and some of your screws and O-rings. I got my picks. I use a crescent wrench, a pair of needle nose, a screwdriver, and you'll need a set of Allen wrenches. I also have a small bottle of Loctite 242. I use my PST G-Man lube. I just put it in one of my container cups here. It's easier to get to this way. And to take this one apart, I start off by undoing the cap, the socket head cap screws that are right here. I have 3 of them. They're a 1024 by 3-inch long. So I get those apart. There's a lot of little seals and ball bearings in this adapter in particular. So you want to make sure that when you get to where you're going to take it apart, that you got like a rag down at the bottom so nothing really like bounces away. Once I get the screws out, you can see a little bit of spring tension. The top comes off, and you can drop the screws in your hand and just lay them off to the side. And you can pull the actuator out, pick some of the O-rings that are stuck to the side, set them off to the side, remove your spring, take off your locator, and then right here you'll have some O-rings that help seal these ports right here. It's your vacuum and your fill port. Okay. Now, I use a couple different tools to take these pieces here up. These are your glands. They have seals on the side of them right here that you can take off as you're going along. That will be getting replaced. And for right now, I can use the seals out of the kits, but I'm going to reuse these seals. Let's see if I can possibly do it like this here. It's pretty sticky. This one must have sat on the shelf for a while. Then I'll set these off to the side here. And then you have this piece here, which has your housing. I'll take the O-ring off of the actuator here, set it off to the side. Set my actuator there and my spring. And here's the spring for the actuator. Now, I have an O-ring in here that I'm going to take out, set off to the side. Then there's a seal, an O-ring right here. You have a glide ring and an O-ring inside for a moving part. Now this here is the sub-assembly I've had in my hand right here. I'm going to take off the lock piston. The lock piston off of the body. And inside the body are some ball bearings. And you don't want to lose them. That's why I've got the rag here. You can see them right here. There's 6 of them. And this one in particular, it's got a 9/64 ball bearing in it. And that's what creates the lock on the Schrader valve connection for the port to fill the AC air conditioning on your cars. I have a U-cup seal that I pop off right there. And then you have 440 screws holding this assembly on. I will get those off. Using the right Allen wrench. Right here. Break them loose. These are all pretty small parts. So you want to have a rag setting down so that they don't bounce all over the place. And then I can just lift the part up and pour the screws in my hand. Set them off right here on the rag next to the ball bearings. I'll then remove the seal that's inside here. This here is your main seal. It's a 2207 O-ring. Get it with your pick. Bring that one out. And then you should have a small ring right here. Now I'll set this off to the side. You notice I have a roll pin right here on the side there. That's for alignment. It only goes on one way. You can't It'll only slide in right here where it aligns with the hole. Now I have my valves. Now I can move the valves with my finger, but they have a real strong spring inside of them. So what we do here is I'll use an Allen wrench and a screwdriver to disassemble. And I'll take the screwdriver in here and give it a slight turn to loosen the Allen nut. As you can see, it loosens because they're not super tight. They're not supposed to be cranked on. Now, once I get them loose, I should be able to unscrew them right up here at the top. Okay. Once they're loose, the Allen screw comes off right up here on the top. You can remove the Allen screws. And then you can take your seal retainers and they'll have a seal down at the bottom of them. And you can remove those. And as you can see, I'm keeping all the seals that are the same kind of together, just in case I have to reuse them. Once you do that, you can take the seal right here on the side and remove that one, getting under it and just pulling it. And you knock them out, your valve spool assemblies, and you can see them popping out with the springs out the bottom. There. That's good. Now that should be all the seals in that part. You can take your springs off, set them off to the side, and then you have your seals right down here on the piston assemblies, the valve spool assemblies, and I'll take those off. And then right here you have some backup rings. We used to use a full backup ring, but now we use a split ring. It's easier to assemble and disassemble. As you can see, you just pull the split ring off with a pick because it's got a split in it. And you can see the split. They're not broken, they're made that way. So it's good to save some of the stuff when you're taking it apart and rebuilding it, because when you're in a pinch and you reach into your kit and you've run out of something, you may be able to reuse one of these to get you through a pinch. Once I get these off, they come off pretty quick when you've done a few of them. And there you have it. We'll get started on rebuilding. I'll start off first by doing a bunch of sub-assembly seals. First I'm going to put the seals on the valve spool assemblies. First off I do is I lubricate the O-rings, and this here is going to be an O-ring number 2007C. We use the C series O-rings for the AC because it's the series that handles the cold from the Freon. Okay. As soon as I get it past the point, I get it into the middle. I just use my pick to stretch it out just a touch, and then use my finger and my pick to rotate it around, and then push it down with my thumbs to the groove. I've already got my split ring setting out here. The split ring is it's a number 8007S248. It'll be up here on your seal kit. I open the split and I push it in the groove and use my finger to close it. Just open the split, use your finger to close it, and what you do is you take two of those split backup rings and you make somewhat of an O-ring sandwich.
Where your hands are at right now is good, so, because I got it zoomed in close since those are small.
Okay. Here. Now, once I get those, all there, I will start putting on some of the other O-rings. Now, I will grab my 2114s C series O-rings. These three right here. I'll get a little bit of lube, lubricate those, my fingers, and put them on right here. Just push them on with my thumbs. Is it good? Okay. And I just put them in there and get them all set. So now I'll set them off to the side. I'll pull this piece over here. And what I'll do is I take one of my Allen wrenches and I will go down inside the pocket here along the wall and just put a little bit of the G-Man lube on the wall where these O-ring assemblies and backup ring assemblies are going to slide inside of the body. Now I'll also take and I'll put a little bit of G-Man lube right here and on the outside of this O-ring here. I'll kind of like fill it like as if you were like packing a bearing in a that needed to be packed with grease before you put it on maybe a wagon wheel or something. But you just pack it in there just a little bit so that there's still grease in there once the grease starts rubbing off of the O-ring itself. And I'll do that to all three of these and get them ready. Just like that. And just fill all the cracks with a little bit of the G-Man lube, and then wipe my hands off a little bit. And after I get all of this on and they're all lubricated and ready, I'll lay them off to the side here, and I'll put a little bit of Loctite 242, removable Loctite, and I'll put a little dab right here on the threads at the end of the valve spool assembly. And then I'll take and drop my springs. These here are B6 springs, and they have like a zinc plate coating on them. And I'll drop them into the pocket. I'll get them ready. And I'll take my valve spool assemblies. Well, first, before I do that, I'm going to put a little lubricant along the wall where the main seal O-ring is going to set right in here. Now I'll push my valve spool assembly and I'll give it a little push with my finger so that it holds it up in there. Do that with the other two. And then I'll set them down to the side here for a second. Now I'll take my 2009 C series O-ring and I'll lubricate it and put it right over the threaded part of the valve spool assembly. Lubricate them a little bit, get them up in there. Then I'll take my seal retainer with the groove end down and the counterboard end up. And I will set that on top of the O-ring and line the hole up with the threads on the valve spool assembly. Then I'll take my 440 Allen nuts, and you can see that there's a little capped end right here that just juts out a little bit. That's the side that's going to stay up. And I'll set that inside the seal retainer just like that. Now there's a little trick to tightening these. Okay, what I do is I take and I stick my finger on the corresponding valve spool and I push it up, and then I can tighten this down on the thread until I feel the spinning. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Once I feel it, I'll do the next one. And I'll try not to cross the threads while I'm doing it. It's got to be smooth when you tighten it up, as if you were tightening a small nut on there. Okay, and once I get that, then I'll hold it with my Allen wrench and I'll give it a little turn to snug it in good. And I'll in turn do that on all the other two. Just like a screwdriver. There. Once I have that assembly set, I can start putting on my other O-rings. I will take and I will put a 2031C. We'll go around in this groove right here. And I'll just push that down with my fingers after I lubricate it. And this here is the matching end that goes to seal that. And I will lubricate the inside where that's going to go, so that's all done. And I'll lubricate this piece, the arbor, where the seal is going to go in here, so I get a good seal. I'll clean it a little bit off the face. I don't need so much on the face of it. Then I'll take and put my 1453X-20570 O-ring. It matches up to this, but I'll put it on right here, right on the top. Once I get that on, I will then align my roll pin with the roll pin groove and place it on. Then I'll take my 440 screws with 440 lock washers and I'll place them in the counter bores. And commence to tightening them up. Now, I'm not going to tighten this up all the way. I got it just enough to where I can feel it snugging. I'll go to the opposite side. Then I'll start this one. So I'm trying to get an even seal of the O-ring that's under there. Now I'll go around and slowly tighten. And as I get it snugger, now they're all snug. I'll give a little, like almost like a quarter of a turn almost, just under it. Just to make sure that these here are tight. I'll look into the light and just kind of see it, make sure I got like no light through the crack there that I can see, so I know it's sealed. Okay, now I'll take a little bit of lube and I'll put it around here and a little bit more on this O-ring right here. Even put a little bit up in here. And then I'll get the main seal, which is a 2207. C, and now I'll put it in you can see the groove is down here at the bottom of this first step, right down there. So if you drop it in there and you take your Allen wrench, you can pretty much push it down to the bottom. And then push your fingertip in and it should slide right down in the groove. Now once you do that, you can lubricate the U-cup seal on the inside and the outside. And you can see where it's cupped right here and it's capped right here. You put the cup side down because where the where the roll pin was, that hole right there, is going to be a lock-unlock air mechanism. Once you get that on, you can then take a little bit of lube around the ball bearing ports. Put a little bit on the inside because the ball bearings are going to go in there. At the same time, you're feeling too if it's smooth. If it's not, you might want to hit it with a little bit of Scotch-Brite or a little bit of a file, you know, and just make it a little bit smooth because you don't want that all catching in there. That's where the ball bearings are going to open and close to lock on the Schrader valves. And I'll put the ball bearings in. And the lubrication helps hold them in there so they don't fall out all over the place. Now that you got that in there, I don't grab any extra lube, but what's on my finger already, I will just put a little bit of a thin coating on here on my lock piston. But I will put a little bit up here where the ball bearings are going to ride on the lip of the lock piston to make it a little bit smoother. And then I'll slide that over, and as you can see it drop down on its own. Now I'll take my spring, which is a Century number S3173. Now we'll pop that on the top. Once I got that set, I've already pre-lubricated the side of my housing for the O-ring down here and for the wall that the U-cup is going to be sliding on the inside of here. But you can see where it's going to move up and down on. Now put that over the top, and I'll just make sure that I got free movement. Now while it's assembled, I will turn it upside down. Now while I've got that there, I'm going to sub-assemble my housing, my manifold, and my actuator. I'll get a 210C that goes around the actuator piston area.
Do you want to move that to the center and move that out of the way? There we go.
And I will put my O-ring on the actuator piston, and I will pack that one with some lubricant. And I will set it off to the side. I'll take the excess that's on my finger and lubricate the inside wall where the piston is going to move. Now I can take my piston and set that inside. Now I'm going to lubricate the stem of the actuator. Then I'm going to take and put my 1453X-20570 spring, and then I'm going to take my locator, and the locator has a cup side and a male side. You're going to leave the male side up. Just drop it right down. Right on top of the spring. After you're done with that, you're going to take and, where'd you go? You're going to take your rod seal. It's a Trelleborg. It's got an RG460B006-T05 number. It's a little green slide ring. And what you're going to do is you're going to put it over the top and slide it down the stem of the actuator all the way down to right there, which is going to hold your locator and your spring assembly in place so it doesn't fall. Now you can set this off to the side. I can then grab the tube. I can grab my 2-012 O-rings, C-series, and lubricate them up and put them in their corresponding grooves on the manifold. Should be right here. And right here. Then I've got a corresponding 2007C groove right up here at the back by this little wall on the manifold. Now once I get those two set up like that, I am going to take and put my 2018C O-rings on the glands. And they just go right there on the wall of the glands. Now you notice two glands have alignment plugs, one gland doesn't. Myself, I know that this threaded hole right here lines up with the small 2007 O-ring by the back wall of the 90-degree manifold. So I know that this manifold goes on like this, lined up with this hole right here. But there's been like a problem aligning this up in the past, and the Minion designer had come up with a tool to help some people rebuilding. It's called an alignment plate. It's a detail 760497. And that's this plate right here. It has 3 dowel pins. You can notice that they're in different sizes, so it only works one way. And this is to help you align your alignment plugs and your manifold onto the adapter. It gets everything aligned and preset, so all you have to do is put the manifold on. You simply put the small pin, it sets just like that, and you can see the 2 holes right here are where you're going to take and align your alignment plugs. So when I pull this up, one plug is going to go here, one alignment plug is going to go here. And when I set this down on it, you can see that the alignment plugs are not lined up. So I can turn them just a little bit. And now I can pull it all you can do is get them as close as possible and then adjust them. But a lot of the people didn't know that. See, now I have a trick though. Okay? You want to get them aligned, you take your alignment plug and you do this. See my Allen wrench? Okay. See how it's lined up with these holes right here? Okay. Now this one here is the same thing. I eye it, and then I line it up with these holes like this. See how it's in there? Now, when I take this right here, they're close enough to where you can turn them just a little bit more or less yourself. Now you got them more centered. So the tool helps quite a bit with centering it. But that's how we would do it. Without it, we'd line it up like this. All right? Now I'll take and I'll lubricate my 2012 O-rings. And pop them all right here. Take my 2070 O-ring and just set it. I'm not going to push it down, right in the middle hole. And I'll put my last gland on. And I try to stay true to it still and line up the hole in line, but we're not using it. And I'll push that down. Now that it's aligned, I can take my screws and lock washers, 1024s by 3, number 10s, and get them in there. And what I'm going to do, okay, you can, on this one here, I got to use my fingers to push this piece down a little bit. And I'll line up the actuator with the center, and I'll line up the screws with the screw holes, and then with my finger I'll push the locator down so that it seals, and it matches the seal and the glide ring together to form one seal. Then I'll push these down and I'll line my housing screw holes right here with the screw ends, and then I can thread them. And then tighten them all up. And that is how you rebuild the 90.